So, hi everyone. Thanks for coming. Hope you learned something interesting today. Today I'm going to talk about Qwik. Not very quick, but about Qwik. And Qwik is really a new kind of framework. And I know what you might be thinking, like, oh, come on, like a new kind of framework. There is one every week. But really, part of my job today is to convince you at least that Qwik can do fundamentally things in a different way. And it's based on some concept that's becoming more and more common in other frameworks. There's a lot of research in pretty much all the framework teams exploring some of the ideas I'm going to talk today. So my name is Manu. I work as a framework engineer at Builder in the open source team, where we built Qwik and other open source projects like Mitosis. For the last 12 years, I've been building SDKs and APIs for all sorts of things, from banking to applications, music, all sorts of things. If you use web components, you might know Stencil was a compiler for web components. I'm also the creator of Gene Web Framework, one of the most useful ones for Go, and I did a lot of game engine development in the past. So who in here know what the big O notation is? Don't be shy. Okay. So for the ones that don't worry. The big O notation is this tool that computer scientists use to describe how an algorithm behaves in terms of time or memory, right? So if the input size grows linearly and the time also does linearly, we're talking about ON. That means that if the task is double, maybe the time is also double. It can be much worse than that. It can be exponential, right? Which becomes very impractical if the size gets bigger. And ideally, in the ideal case, we will have ON, right? It doesn't really matter if it's 1 or 100 or 1 million to process. The time should be, in theory, the same. So at Builder, we kind of use this tool or this idea, really, to look at different frameworks. I don't know if you can see the numbers, but basically what the table you see there is that we build different applications from one component out of 280 and use different frameworks to, and then measure how much JavaScript was delivered, right? So there is very interesting things. For them, all of them follow this linear trend that is almost the same slope. There is two differences. This is Svelte. Svelte is actually the smallest one for a very small application. Actually, when the number of components grows, it's actually the one that delivers more JavaScript. And then Qwik, Qwik is flat. And there is something already here to achieve this, fundamentally different that Qwik does to achieve this difference. So Qwik is not innovating in syntax or a different way to build applications. There is something more. Sites require more and more JavaScript. This is a fact. This is information for web archives. And in the last 10 years, the average JavaScript spend is steadily increasing. No one should be surprised by this. But is this really a problem? Well, I have these QR codes. You can check in my slides. I have some of these ones. You can check what the link is. In Builder, we build this tool, Performance Insights, which is a bit similar like high scores, but also tells you how your score will be if you optimize the images, what it will be if you optimize the CSS, and what it will be if you optimize or remove the JavaScript. When we run this tool from the 50 biggest e-commerce sites in the US, we find that pretty much all of them, you see that one over there is in red. That means like pretty much all these e-commerce sites are really not passing the test. There is a couple. There is Amazon.com has 50, and Staples.com. So you probably cannot read it, but it's Amazon is the one at the top. The graph here is the interesting thing. So if we optimize, this is a delta. So if we optimize the CSS, we will barely improve 10 points. If we optimize the images, 10 points. But if we optimize JavaScript, the improvement will be like 60 points. Pretty much all of them jump to the green side if you were able to optimize JavaScript. So you start to see that the bottleneck is JavaScript. That's only the point of this experiment. We used to say that there is two kinds of companies. Those who prioritize performance at all costs and those with bad performance. And this is a problem because frameworks already lead you to the wrong way. Like if you start using a framework, you start calling application, building, you have to ship something fast. By default, it leads you to a slow website, right? If you spend time, you probably go through refactors, you can probably make it faster. Is it really a problem? Well, you might come to me and say, look, this is not really a problem to me, and I believe you. But for a lot of business, performance means business. Performance means there is more conversion. I don't know if you can read it, but there are well-known case studies where basically makes the point like every 100 milliseconds is 1% more conversion, 20% faster, 10% more conversion. There's several things. There is a whole article for every one of these ones. I'm going to argue, and this is also a different way to look at performance, that there is a system correlation between sites becoming more and more interactive and the amount of JavaScript. And I think we could be naive and say we should start to build websites like 10 years ago, where it was barely HTML, and we should do that. But that's not going to happen. Business doesn't want that, user doesn't want it, and it's just not going to happen. It's not going to everyone agree right now and say, okay, we are going to just write sites without super simple ones. So kind of like, again, my talk is don't blame developers for what frameworks did here. The current trend is going up because the current frameworks are ON. It's not your fault. But what if frameworks were O1? What if? So Qwik, we can achieve this. I don't know if you can read it, but about two concepts. And so this talk is also about this concept. It's about being resumable and being progressive. In order to understand what that is, you have to understand first what a current framework, like the current frameworks that prioritize DX. We were talking about React, we were talking about Vue, Angular, how they solve this problem. So when you execute one of these applications and you want to run this application in the server, in the black side there, we will see that there's some time, the server does a bunch of things, it serializes whatever it needs to serialize, and sends the HTML. Sends the HTML, and then at that point, it's really like just HTML. It's dead. There is no any listeners, there is nothing. The problem is that to make this site alive, you have to hydrate it. That's actually where the words come from. It's just like, you know, sand, and you have to put some water to make it do something, right? So it really have to download most of the application, all the components in the application. It needs to rerun, replay all the application logic, and then at some point, there is user interactive. So whenever you hydration, it means that, okay. I want you to think about replay. Hydration means redo everything that was in the server, do it again. Resumability is just about resume the application. It's about the server did some work, the application stops there, and then you keep interacting with it. It doesn't have to run what already running the server. So in this case, it will be the application running the server. I don't know why it's kind of weird. Application running the server, and then at that point, it's already interactive. You can click, and it will react to your changes. It doesn't have to execute or download anything else. So why this is a very big and very hard problem? So I'm going to open this stack fleets. I'm going to show, I don't know if you can read this, but is it possible to see the code, more or less? Not? Not? I don't know why I cannot make it. Okay, maybe like this? Okay, so here there are two components. There is the app component and a component. And you see that there is some console log. There is a console log here, there is a console log here, and there is a click, right? So in order for this code to run, it's obvious that you need to run this, right? Like in order to disclosure, in order to be able to execute this stuff, you need to run this code. Actually, disclosure is getting a variable from here. So what Qwik can do is that Qwik can execute this code in isolation. It can completely execute that piece of code without having to download or execute the rest of the component. So if we see, and I open the console, it's going to be like, so every time I, well, the application runs and there is render parent, it renders twice, but every time I click, the component needs to execute. That makes sense. Qwik, if I open the same application with Qwik, which is going to be, again, bit challenging. Let's see if it's... if my internet allows me. So it's not hello Qwik, it's not hello, it's hello Qwik. So I wanted to look at this. There is the render parent and render component. It gets printed here. But I want to emphasize that these logs, they come with SSR. Whenever it's this color, it's like a yellow color, it means that this console log came from the server. It executed where doing SSR. If now I click here, only run that. It didn't run anything else. So let's see what I'm actually going to just remove this, and I'm going to put an alert and see what happens. I'm going to remove that. So I'm going to click here. There's an alert. Okay. I'm going to open the DevTool, see what happened here. Wow, it's so small. It's crazy. Okay, don't worry. I will scale it up. Okay, so okay, don't worry. I can see it. Network. Okay, I'm going to click. Oops. Oh, that's not a good idea. So hard to do this. Okay. So believe me, there is one thing here that downloaded. This one over here. I don't know if you can see, but this one, literally the only thing that downloaded was this. Oops. Okay. I don't know if you can see it. It's just that. It just downloaded the click. Nothing else. But you author components just normally, right? So I'm going to keep with the talk, and let's see more advanced examples. So what I want to hear is like, right now is like I like this analogy, is the server-side cake baking analogy. Right now the server bakes a cake, but instead of actually sending the cake, what it does is that it actually takes a picture of the cake and sends to you the picture plus some instructions. So when the user wants to eat the cake, he can't, right? It's just a picture that it was sent. The client, the browser, needs to get the instruction, fetch all the ingredients, actually bake the cake again, compare if the cake you baked is exactly the same as the one you get in the picture, and at that time, it's like, yeah, now you can interact, now you can eat it. So what Qwik does is there is some debate, like, we are like closing the circle. We are going back to jQuery by JavaScript. But I will argue that no, like in the past, it was about the rendering and the interactivity was separated. You will have PHP, or you will use Ruby on Rails to generate some to generate some HTML, and then you will use jQuery for the pieces of interactivity that you needed. That was actually a very performant approach, because you just download JavaScript for what you need. There is nothing else, right? The rest of the logic stays in the server. But of course, it has some bad things. I don't think you can read any of that, right? I can't. I don't know. It's just completely red to me. So it says very performant, but it was a slow development, error-prone, duplicated logic, as you can imagine. And the current generation, it was like all this research on DX, how we can make JavaScript, and how can you build complex and more complex applications with it. So during this point, it was like the rendering and interactivity get united into a single framework. You will use Angular View, you will create your components, and you will not have to worry about that. It will just work, right? But the problem is that it uses hydration. You need to run the application twice in order to make this work. The future, or the new generation, is learning from this generation. It's not going back and tell you need to start making your application a completely different way. What you know already will still apply. It's just these frameworks are going to focus more on how to get the good DX of the current generation, but make it fast. Because what the frameworks do right now, it doesn't make any sense. The same way the cake baking analogy doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense to do the word twice. It's pure overhead. Everything it's doing is just waste. So Qwik is one of them, but it's not the only one. There is Marco, and there is more frameworks following these ideas. We ran some bigger application, and we tried to see some of the numbers. And the thing is that when we measure, and in this case, I don't know if you can see, but it's the amount of JavaScript, but also the times to interactive. One of the most interesting things about this, which I don't know why it's not working, but it's supposed to be a GIF, was that as the application gets bigger, all these things keep moving, but Qwik stays. And that was kind of the point. I don't know why it's not animating. O1 frameworks are not new. With this internal framework used at Google, and it powers the biggest customer the applications that face customers, like Google Search, Gmail, Google Photos, extremely complex applications that need to be extremely fast. It's been around for 8 years, but again, you are making a trade-off. Even Google is making a trade-off here. They are not using this tool for every application they have. They are only using for those because this is still it's still comparable to the developer experience of other frameworks. You have to have like a backend in Java. Business logic needs to be duplicated. All the DOM manipulations has to be manual, etc. Amazon has claimed a very similar things. They cannot use the system generation of frameworks, and they don't have a framework per se, but basically they hack around. They are just like doing like an advanced version of Ruby on Rails plus jQuery in order to run their sites. So what I'm going to show you now is some of the superpowers that you can get with Qwik. So one of the first ones is no JavaScript by default. So if you just build stuff, you will not get any JavaScript. Nothing will actually run. So I'm going to try to show this. I'm going to refresh this site. Okay, so can you see this? Okay. So if I open the HTML, this is a very simple application. I'm going to scroll slowly. That's it, right? Nothing surprising. There is no any script tag. There is no any JavaScript. Nothing impressive. I'm going to right here. I'm going to add a click. On click, I'm going to put console log. Very simple. No console log, no, because we cannot see it. An alert. Hello. Oops. So now, oops, no, I did something wrong here. Something got serialized here. It got serialized some path, and then some stuff here, and then there is some piece of JavaScript. This piece of JavaScript is around 70 or 700 bytes, and it's always the same. It doesn't matter if your application has 1 million components or nothing. It's just a fixed amount of JavaScript. We call it the Qwik loader. So what happened here is that this application that you have in your left was split into different parts. The first one, I'm going to see if I can see here, your application in the side was split in this part. I don't know if you can see. Oops, definitely not. Okay. Which is just the alert, and a different chunk that is actually the template. It's in debugging mode, so it has a lot of more things. What happens, this is my easy, right? Because I can, this is easy. I can just take this piece of code and put it here, like handler, or click, right? It's not that complicated, right? But what happens if we actually close around things? So imagine I have here a variable. I'm going to put Porto, right? And I'm going to use this variable inside here. And then I'm going to click. It's saying, oops. Oh, okay, no, I have to do this. If I click, say hello Porto. Yeah, I don't know, it's impossible to read, but it says hello Porto. Trust me. Yeah, this has become more complicated, right? Because I cannot take this thing and put it here. Because what happens with this variable, right? Like it's a problem. You cannot just take it and put it somewhere else. What the optimizer does is that it solves this problem, but serializing and being able to static analyze the closures. So in this case, if we see the generated code, we will see that actually did something like this. It is able to get the lexical scope, the variable, and execute that code, and nothing else needs to run. I'm going to show you something a bit more complicated, because in most of the applications, at some point, you need to actually run some JavaScript. You actually want something that needs to happen when the application starts. So in this application over here, I'm going to make it a bit bigger, a bit or much bigger. Okay, can you see this stuff? Okay, so as I scroll down, okay, first of all, the code. This is an application. It has a parent component which renders a bunch of things. There is a click, blah, blah, blah. It renders a bunch of items, and then there is a clock, and this is the clock, has some state, and then it has the use client effect. And use client effect is literally, I want to run this code in the client, and it needs to be run eagerly, right? Because imagine you want to run something in WebGL, on the talk, for example, that Kenneth did this morning. You want to run something that actually needs to run in the browser. It doesn't matter like you just click, you want to show something, right? So you will use a use client effect. The thing is that when you open this, still there is no JavaScript. As I scroll, the application starts to run. So this is kind of thing that can do automatically by Qwik. In this case, we can configure the eagerness of this thing. So by default, the eagerness is when the component becomes visible. And in this case, I want to show something kind of mind-blowing. I'm going to put here, on this root component, a console log, and say parent. And I'm going to put another one here in the clock itself. Oh, actually, we have it. Render clock, okay? So if we run this application in the server, obviously, right, the code needs to run. It gets there, it executes, I don't know if you can, yeah, there, it executes the console logs. But as I execute this application, I'm going to refresh, nothing. In fact, none of this code was downloaded in the client. Nothing. It was never downloaded to download any of the templates, not even the template of the clock, which is an interactive component. Why? Because it's enough for Builder, for Qwik, to download only the client effect, only this piece of code. And then, when it needs to update the style, it can actually go to the HTML and update the styles directly without having to re-render or even download the whole component. So you don't trust me here, I'm going to show you. So the first thing that downloads here is the client, right? It downloaded the client effect. I don't know if you can see that. And the next thing that downloads is the runtime itself, which is in development mode. And I think there is some caching issue, that's why it's downloaded it twice, but it's basically the same file. Okay. How is this compared to the, how this compares to the current, going to close the DevTools and architecture. So if you have a monolith application, I'm going to make this a bit smaller. Like a monolith application even before lazy loading. So you have a single piece of JavaScript. So you will do the SSR HTML send from the server, render from the and send from the server and render in the browser. So it will be like this kind of like thing that is visible. The browser downloads the application JavaScript, and then it needs to download all the components, and all the components get hydrated. I'm going to say, oh, I'm going to use dynamic imports. I'm going to use lazy loading. This is going to make my application faster. Wrong. It's going to make it slower. Because now, maybe you are not downloading the whole application, but you are introducing waterfalls. So now what we have is that the application gets sent, but even if you use lazy loading, all the components in the page needs to be downloaded. At least those need to be there. So it's sent from the browser, downloads some application of JavaScript, executes something, the application needs to request more components, and then it gets the rest visible. You might have here something called Astro and partial hydration. This is already a big improvement, because in partial hydration, you can make islands. You don't have to say your whole application needs to be hydrated. You can say this part, for example, is completely static. You don't have any buttons. There is nothing interactive with it. So you can just have pure HTML. You still have to design the islands. You as a developer need to think about it and say, maybe this, maybe not. You have to make the islands. But the thing is that there are still islands, right? So if I interact with this component over here, the whole island has to download. The parents and also the children. So for example, I'm going to interact with this here. If I click here, maybe the parents need to download too, and the children. Qwik is different in that sense because there is no islands. You just interact with things. So for example, if I want to interact with this component over here, I just click it. And if there's a dependency, it will also wake up or re-render that parts because the Qwik serializes the interactivity tree or the dependency tree of the application. Same here. I can download this. I have to click here, here. I can even interact with parents, and it doesn't have to wake up the children. And really, to download the whole application, you will really have to download or you interact with everything. So this is the first superpower. The second superpower is that bundling is decoupled from the code. And this is extremely powerful. In the demos I'm doing, you will see that, it's downloading very little pieces, right? When you build an application, it's made of a lot of small chunks, like the click, this, that, is all split in the smallest possible unit. But that's just in development mode. If you're actually testing in production, you can actually change this stuff. So for example, in this application, I'm going to open up one a bit more complicated, the counter. Counter, I think it has a couple of things, don't worry. So the counter has some stuff. So we see the symbols and the client bundles. No, this is not a good example. There's not too many. I think the clock might be interesting. Okay. So client bundles, see like the application make all these different files for your application. But this is an option. If we say the entry strategy and we say single, then it's just one file. The bundling is not reflected in your code. The bundling is pure a configuration-based thing that can actually be optimized by real metrics. You can actually monitorize how different parts of your code get used, collect this information in BigQuery, and be able to rebundle your application in the ideal bundling. And the ideal bundling is not something the optimizer can figure it out, because it's something that depends on how the user is going to interact with it. So the powerful thing about this is that in an extremely complicated application, you always talk about time to interactive is 3 seconds. But in Qwik, it's not like the whole application gets interactive. You can actually have the buy button. That is the most important thing that needs to happen and be instant. It's the first thing that gets pre-fetched, pre-downloaded, it's already cached there, the user interacts and it's available as soon as possible. Maybe there's something in the bottom, it's not that important. Maybe that if the one user goes and interacts with that part, it will take some more time, but you will see in real metrics that that's not the case. Another of the superpowers is that you can use other frameworks. So in this demo, I'm going to show, we actually have React working in a, okay, I have to stop this. So the resumability model that Qwik has can be used to implement partial hydration in other frameworks. So when we try Qwik React, we'll see something like this. We downloaded a bunch of things. Nothing downloaded. As I interact, I'm going to interact with this. And now is the material UI from React. So I'm just going to show the code. Qwik React, index. I have, for example, the material UI button. And the way this works, because we have a function called Qwikify, where you take a React component from React, and it gives you a Qwik component that will not run any JavaScript. And you can configure when this happens, because indeed, this becomes an island. Right? When you interact with this bit of JavaScript, it becomes an island that needs to download. We cannot be that fine-grained. But still, it's a big improvement, because, for example, the button, maybe I don't never need to download it. Right? The button is something you click. You never really have to download the button to interact with it. The fourth superpower is true and practical micro frontends. Currently, when you try to use different applications built from different places, you end up the problem that you end up with the same framework and the whole iteration happen now multiple times. So you make the same problem you had before, now even worse. In Qwik, that's not a problem. You can just concatenate different HTMLs come from different origins and make an application. So we have also a very cool demo about that. I'll show you, start. this one, I have the containers. So in this case, we have different URLs. So for example, this one, going to open here. It comes, it's a demo that we built with Cloudflare in collaboration with Cloudflare. So we have some endpoint that returns this. So if I interact with this, in theory, it's interactive. Then there is the body, which is also streaming in HTML. There's no any JavaScript here involved. Just very simple thing, just streaming HTML. Okay, again, I'm going to just prove this one. If I disable JavaScript, it's literally streaming the HTML, right? This is not like out of order, it's literally streaming. In Qwik, you can just have one application made of all this. And still, no, I have still the JavaScript disabled, it starts behaving just normally. From the implementation point of view, it's as easy as container. I just have something like this. And remote app is going to do some path, it's going to do some fetch, and it's going to stream it inside the application. The thing is that later on, when I'm going to enable JavaScript, I'm going to interact with it. If I refresh this, and we check the HTML, we see that the root component, the whole app, is a container, and it's pause. I haven't interacted with this application. I don't know if you can see that. It's pause. And we have this other island, which is the header, which is here, and it's also pause. Try to see, pause and pause. When I interact with the header, notice this is going to change from pause to resume, but this is going to still be pause. So I interact with it. You have some difficulties. Try again. Okay, I don't know what I did. I broke it. I was just changing things. But it works. Believe me. At the end of the day, what we want to achieve is that you can see fast websites. We don't want to be back to the business of saying like, yeah, you build your application and now you are like, apply these 10 super easy tricks to make it fast and go through these refactors. I think the defaults allow you to get this set up. What we are building Qwik is because we want to solve something we call the front-end cap theorem. So of course, not the database cap theorem, but it follows some of the same ideas. There are three things that you want to achieve in a database. You want to be, well, in a database in the front end, you will have a lot of capabilities. You want your application to have a lot of functionality, tons of interactivity, A/B testing, metrics. Your marketing team is going to tell you to add this hotspot thing. And then you also want to have a performance application. You want to have 1 on 100, instant time to interactive, fast, slow websites. But not only that, you want to have a nice API. You want your developers to be able to build fast. But not only that. Your website's probably not only by developers, it's owned by other parties, like marketing team. They want to use a drag and drop tool. They want to do different things. The website at the end is like a product owned by the whole company that they want to do changes. Right now, you have to make a trade-off. You have to say, okay, if I want performance and a nice DX, I will use something like Astro, partial hydration. That will give you that, for sure. It's super easy to build, and you will have a nice performance out of the box. But actually, no, I don't want to be like a simple block. I want to build something way more complex. So maybe you use Next.js or Nux or something like that. So you're prioritizing a nice API with a lot of capabilities. But then it's like, no, actually, the performance is super important. Then you will not use Next. But you need a lot of performance and a lot of capabilities. You will use something like Ruby on Rails plus jQuery. You will use something like HTMLX. You will use a lot of, or even with Google. So we are not here to try to come up with a new idea or a new trade-off. We want to actually solve this problem. Because that's what Builder, or our company, does. We build tools for e-commerce, and e-commerce is like the final boss of front-end development. You have all the possible problems. You have a lot of you have multiple languages, you have a lot of things, like the marketing needs to configure it. And right now, there is no way to scale this. Companies have to make these trade-offs all the time. And Qwik is kind of, is part of solving this problem through fundamentally change how the frameworks work. Thank you very much. I have some stickers from Qwik, so if you want to have some question also, ask right away. Yeah?
Thanks. Awesome presentation.
Thank you.
There seems to be a lot of pros of using Qwik, but can you share us what are the cons? What are the weaknesses?
So when I talk about hydration and resumability as a concept, I think resumability fundamentally is a better approach. In the sense of trade-off, there is not a negative trade-offs. It just doesn't make sense what the hydration is. Now, in terms of the implementation with Qwik, because again, like when I talk about resumability, Qwik, or how Qwik solves it, is not the only way it can be solved. Like Marco is also trying to do something else, and they take different trade-offs. So in terms of Qwik, I will say that we make trade-offs, and we try to sometimes force the API to look a lot like what developers are familiar with. So in that sense, we want to make it very easy, but that also comes with, when you're designing something at the end and you optimize for that, at the end of the day, you find like something, like you find like oh, this doesn't fit quite well. And I will say that in Qwik, you need to care about what data gets serialized. So usually, if you're just building a React application, you don't have to think about that. In Qwik, you do. Like most of the time you don't, but in some cases you do. And I believe that it's something that can be solved through better tooling. So we are investing a lot in having like amazing error messages and ESLint. We are very inspired by Rust. We think it's a language that introduces a lot of trade-offs. But the DX and the compiler is so good that it lets you do the job. So I will say that that's the trade-off. Of course, it's a new framework, so you have to be kind of in the crossing the chasm marketing. You have to be like an early adopter. We released beta. The community is thrilling right now. There is like around 5,000 people in Discord. There's people helping each other. For me as a maintainer, it's amazing because you start building this, you start to respond all the questions, and when you start to see that there is some growth and stuff, so it's a super good time to join and start to experiment with it. But of course, it's a new approach, right? So we'll see. Thank you for the question.
So awesome presentation.
Yep.
If it's still in beta, you will not consider this production ready. So if I want to now say, okay, this is awesome, I will bring this to my team.
No, I think it is. Qwik has been already around for more or less like 2 years. During these 2 years, we've been experimenting a lot. If you'd see even a year ago how Qwik looked like, it's completely different what it is right now. The beta release, it was like a month ago, for us was like, we are at this point very, very sure of this how it's going to look like. So it's not finished because to finish a project like this, you need a lot of more things. You need a community. You need probably in the website like examples, more documentation, things like this. It's already being in production. We have e-commerce sites in our platform using it. The doc site itself, there's a lot of big companies actually interested in this because they just get the problem, they have it, and they are running proofs of concept. So I think beta right now is a very good moment to start using it. We expect like in 5 months, 6 months, we will release 1.0. Another question?
I saw the API is really close to React. Would you say it's there is shared knowledge between React and Qwik?
100%. That's a big design goal. I think like when you design something that is fundamentally new, you have to choose your battles. And if you, this happens all over, right? If you are, I don't know, you are Svelte. So Svelte is trying to innovate in the reactivity. They're not going to innovate in many other things at the same time. Solid, more or less the same. Solid wants to innovate in how you declarative can re-render things. So they want to look like React. We are exactly in that spot. It was a design goal from the beginning to be able to reuse all the knowledge from a React developer in Qwik, but not only that, from any existing framework that is based component-based. And this is interesting because a lot of the performance community think, right, like the component is actually overhead. There is not really components. You click here, and then something happens there. There isn't like a component. The thing is that developers is a model that works really, really well. And we try to extract that away. It's like solid. You build components, but actually they are not, right? So I think in that sense, definitely it's a big goal. Yeah, thank you for your question.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I'd like to know how does it work? So the components, you only load the effect, this effect, but when you have variables, you show that you use lexical something.
Yes.
Where is that value actually stored, and how does it work if the value is dynamically changed?
That's a very good question. So as I mentioned, like one big part of Qwik is serialization. Like if it was a virtual machine and you stop the virtual machine and you send it to a different host and you keep running it, it has to be serialized. And some way you have to send all the memory snapshot, whatever it needs to do. In Qwik, it doesn't have to serialize everything. So the first thing that we do is that we come from the click handlers. If the application doesn't have any event handler, there's nothing to serialize. So even the amount of serialization is not a function of the amount of components of the page, but the amount of points of interactivity. So we basically, if you have two click handlers, we just walk from the click handlers down and see when you click here, what can possibly happen? And the things that cannot happen will never get serialized. The serialization is something that is reflected here. So in this case, it's a bit tough to it will look something like this. So it's a bit convoluted because it's not something to be like consumed. But basically, the application is serializing the state, and it cannot be just JSON, right? Because in your data, you have cyclic data. You have maybe an object that points to itself. You cannot serialize it as JSON. But instead, what it does is that there is objects. So this will be all the data that gets serialized. And there are subscriptions as well. So for example, this subscription is kind of interesting. It's saying that this is the index 0, right, of the array. So this refers to this object. Okay, so it's in two places, but this is the index 0, this is the index 0. So it's basically saying whatever the hour property of this object change, I need to update this element. I need to re-render this element, for example. Or this, actually the one means to an element which, and going back to the question, if we go back and we are going to just open a very much simpler example, samples, counter, playground, no, not this one. Okay, if we see the HTML, the click has the path. It has the export name. I don't know if you can read that. And at the end, it has this little thing. This is what we call the lexical scope, and it says 0. Okay? The 0 means, like there's two layers of indirection. Is the 0, the index 0 of the lexical scope of this element. Where do we find that? Well, we see that this element has the number 2. If we go to context, we have the number 2. And this is it, 0. So this 0 refers to the state, which is exactly count, is this one over here. So when we resume, we are able to recover this. And when you call use lexical scope, it will be able to get, okay, it's this object. And this object, it will not be just the data. It will be exactly the same object you have originally in the server. It will have all the subscription. It will still be a reactive object per se.
And how is it updated, that object? How is the object updated if it's a dynamic value?
So, so when the application, so in this case, for example, it will recover the state, right? And it will change the value here, plus plus. I think we can go to the symbols. Is this what happens, right? Like we recover the lexical scope and then we update it. What is going to happen here is that in this object already has the subscriptions. We also serialize the subscriptions. So when you change it, it knows that it needs to do something else. It might be update this text node, or it might be call this watch, or rerun this other thing, right? So all this information gets realized.
But if the value is updated on the server side, like, I don't know.
So the application runs in server side and gets pause, right? And at that time is when you send it. So the application runs in the server, pauses, and then you send it, and then it gets resumed. So nothing can change what is paused, right? That's important. So while it's paused, until it gets resumed, the change will not change because you actually pause it. So the state should be the same. The pausing happens at the end of the serialization.
And is with this serializing of the action that you can see the dependencies between different elements in the page?
Absolutely. All the information is reflected in the HTML, and it can be all sorts of things. It can be since updating, re-render other component, or updating a watch, or updating a text node, or updating an attribute. It can be all sorts of things. But for you, it will be just updating that, right? The object includes the state plus all the subscription information. I can show you later if you want, like in detail, everything. Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you for your question. Any more questions? Yeah, there. No. So, as I mentioned before, when we do the serialization, it's not like we walk through all the components and we serialize what everyone needs. Maybe it's a lot, it's hard to explain here because it's very small, but I can show you after how you have this, actually in all this application that I saw before, is using a meta framework we call Qwik City, which have like router, like file-based routing. It has a lot of components. Nothing of that gets realized because we can statically analyze that there is not anything that can trigger a page navigation. So the thing it works is that we start from the click handlers. So in this case, imagine in this application there is only one click. It will be this one, right? So this one captures the store. Okay, so we will walk the store. And the store has two values. I don't know. In this case, it will be the count. Count 0. We put it in the object. We also have subscriptions. So maybe the subscription is an element. So in that case, we walk to that element and say, oh, this element is a component. That means that it can be re-rendered. So we need to also serialize that component to be re-rendered. And so far, so on, right? If this function eventually doesn't do any mutation, it will stop there, right? It will not keep going further. So it's a function of the amount of interactivity. It's not a function of the amount of components, even for serialization. Any more questions? Very good questions. Thank you very much. All good? Okay, thank you.